Welcome back to another episode of the Next Level Minds podcast. My name is Chris Chapman, and I am your host. And if this is your first time tuning in, then this is a podcast dedicated to those who want to reach a next level in their business, personal, or career life. Every other week, I have the opportunity to sit down with a fully qualified guest, entrepreneur, content creator, or mover and shaker in their industry and really walk through their story, how they've gotten from point A to point B and overcame various adversities, setbacks, or failures along the way. As we all know, those are part of the success journey. This podcast has a deep and impactful mission, and that's to impact over 1 million people by helping them reach a next level in their business, personal, or career life. So if you've not done so already, please take the time to subscribe to Next Level Minds, share this episode with a family member, friend, or colleague, leave a review on Apple Podcast, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, as we're now on YouTube with video. Let's go. On to today's guest. I am blessed to be sitting down with Bradley Rhyne, who is the co-founder and owner of OMJ Clothing, which is a custom clother out of Charlotte, North Carolina, who's been around for slightly over 11 years now. And they have done a tremendous job at building a strong brand, building a strong community, providing very high quality products. So if you want to learn more about how to start your business from idea to side hustle to fully running your own company, if you want to learn how to build a brand, build a community, if you want to know how to have strong customer service in your business, then this episode is for you. Let's go ahead and dive in to hear what Bradley has to say. Brad, thanks so much, man, for hopping on the Next Level Minds podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming. So happy to be here.
It's like when I first, met you, I was like, gotta have you on the podcast. And like, I rescheduled, you rescheduled, but sometimes the universe just drags greatness out, right?
Things happen as they're supposed to.
Yeah.
That was my take.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I had to wear the OMJ shirt today that I got from y'all. I got the initials right here. So man, this is a super comfortable shirt. You were not lying when we ended up getting this. So
I love it.
Yeah, it's like you said that. You're like, yeah, you can wear it, walk. And you talked about the Appalachian Trail example of that guy wearing it. I was like, dude, there's no way. And then like, I'll put this thing on and I'm like, man, this is like just as comfortable as a gym shirt, except an extremely nice dress shirt. So I love what y'all are doing there.
I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, man. So we're where we're at, like midsummer, June, kind of crazy. How's the summer been for you so far?
It's been great. Summer, I think with a lot of retail can be a little bit, up in the air. Specifically with our business, which I'm sure we'll go into, it's not quite as seasonal, being, custom suiting and things like that. A lot of our, our seasonal aspect revolves around like weddings and things like that. So we're just kind of pushing through our first big wedding season tranche. When you look at that, people getting married in the summer, your stragglers they just have wrapped up, came in May and early June. And so it's been a big wedding season for us. We've done a lot of weddings. I think in May, I counted, last I counted, we were over 70 weddings that we did just in May alone.
Wow.
And that could be, just the groom, or it could be the whole wedding party. So it's, we've done wedding parties up to like 18 people, which that guy's got a lot of friends.
Yeah, I don't have that many.
I don't have that many either. Or like I said, it's just the groom, but that's been great. Love must be in the air. As I was talking with the team. So that alone has kept us really busy this summer. And then of course, we'll see how the rest of the year goes. And then it picks back up end of summer for all the people getting married in the fall and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine that, and that's a crazy number, like 70 in May. Which first off, I didn't. I imagine some of them aren't just in Charlotte, but like I didn't know Charlotte was such like a wedding city, but I guess it is, right?
People getting married all over. Asheville is a big wedding
Sure.
destination. We've had a lot of people going out west. Pacific Northwest, all over, really. Yeah, I think as Charlotte has become a bit, um, transient with people moving in and that sort of thing, we're seeing people go out for, those special occasions and things like that too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, man. So I'd love to go back a little bit. I think 2007, I want to say, is when you graduated App State.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong there, but you graduated, you started out in the banking world. How was that with interesting, economic situation there?
Yeah. I remember specifically, it was 2009. I had just started working at Bank of America, and probably for the first year, every time I had a manager, and I don't know, he was older, but he would ping me. Yeah, ping, of course, is inner lingo. There's like instant messaging systems internal, but he would ping me and be like, "Hey, I need to meet with you later today." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. This is it." But for like a whole year, and then I go meet with him and be like, "Can you stay a little bit late tomorrow?" It's like,
Yeah.
come on, you could have. What are we doing here? But I say that because I was like terrified. I think because I was the low man on the totem pole, I was safe. But yeah, that 2008, 2009 range in banking was not great. In a turmoil perspective of what's going to happen. And honestly, we'll probably touch on it, but my business partner and I, when we were college roommates, and so we wanted to start this. We knew we needed to get real world experience, so we didn't start it right after college. But I think having that early on, sort of that tumultuous experience with just never feeling comfortable or safe, if you will, definitely pushed us both to think about starting something. And also even going back to that 2007, 8, 9, Shark Tank didn't exist. So I think about that, like entrepreneur kind of meant like you were like, it doesn't have the same meaning as
Like you didn't know
today.
what to do with your life or something.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, well, that guy doesn't have it together, so he's an entrepreneur. But I remember thinking like, I need a little more control over my own destiny here.
Yep.
So I kind of look back, and that was a seminal moment, I think, for both of us, probably everybody during that time, to kind of think like, hey, the place I work, like at the end of the day, it's a job, and no matter how much I love it, it'll never be my thing, right? So it was very influential, I would say, that experience to that we would do this.
Yeah, I think that mindset's so unique because I feel like there's this false mentality of, I'm safe at a job or a company, but I mean, we've seen it, especially in the last like 2 years with these massive corporations just laying constant person after constant person off. I remember when Salesforce had their layoffs, and I mean, they're a great company. I know a lot of people that work for them, but I was seeing on LinkedIn all these people that were like VPs of sales or like 10-year quota achievers just getting laid off. It's like, and that like the company that big is, and you're not safe, like that just kind of narrows in that point that you mentioned there of, yes, it's a risk to start your own business, but at the end of the day, you have much more control over your own destiny, it seems.
Right. And I will also say too, is the grass is always greener, it's not always greener, either side of it, because, you just have to be so, once you do start your own business, there are no, so in banking, especially, I'm sure it's like this other things, some days you just don't have it. You come in, you get your coffee, maybe you read a little ESPN, like you clocked in, but
But you're not there. Yeah, you're not presently like there
right,
mentally. Yeah.
right. You forget about that part of it when you're in it every day. Like I'm working for
Right.
somebody else. You know, to be truthfully honest, I know maybe it's not like that for everybody, but you know, I think we'll all agree in various shapes of our careers, we are not 100% on all the time, and nor should you be for, you know, quality of life. But, you know, starting your own business and you kind of have to be, you know? So, I always do tell folks like, hey, it is great, but it's also not great. You know, there is no grass is greener. There's positives and negatives. You know, it's really the person, you know, what is their personality? You know, what kind of motivates and drives them?
Yeah, I agree, man. I was talking to a business owner the other day, and we are just joking about how, like, he didn't have to take PTO. He's like, I haven't taken PTO in 20 years, but he's like, he's like, I haven't had to put official PTO in 20 years because he's been running his own company for 20 years. But then he's like, but I also
I haven't
haven't
gone
been able
anywhere.
to take off in like 20 years fully. And he's like, I'll go on vacations and this, but he's like, there's always something that needs to be done with the business, even if I'm
Mhm.
quote unquote off. And that's that like other side of like, well, especially these bigger corporations when they have thousands and thousands of employees, like you could leave for 2 weeks and the business is going to be probably just fine without
Right.
you. Versus, I'm sure, especially in the early days of OMJ, you leave for 2 weeks and like 14, right? If you got started, and it's like, that's probably not going to be a good idea.
It's so tough. I mean, even going down to like the beach and,
Yeah.
you know, you're on the beach on the phone with like customs trying to get a package,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
like,
here. Yeah, there's always something. There's always something.
yeah. Okay, so you kind of alluded to this a little bit like 5 minutes ago, and I think when we talked back in like February, March, you mentioned you guys were like a little dabbling in kind of the clothing space in college. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So my business partner Felipe is he's just always been into the fashion world. He grew up, he was fortunate. He traveled a lot, saw the world. Like, you know, his family, they traveled a lot. He's originally from Hong Kong. So he kind of introduced me. You know, I wasn't always into fashion myself. I think I had a creative curiosity and longing for something in that creative space and that design space, but um, I wasn't actually super into it. Shut that. Yeah. But I wasn't actually the one super into it. But he kind of mentored me, I guess you could say, and we just meshed really well. We were completely different people. But the thought was like, well, hey, you're really good at X, and you know, maybe I can help on the business side, and maybe this would actually work, you know,
Mhm.
as a business. Um, but those, you know, if we would have started it right after college, it would have looked very different. It probably would not have worked. So I'm glad we did not. I'm glad we were smart enough to realize we were not smart enough to start that yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't know what you don't know type of
Right.
mentality. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So you're working for the bank, and then kind of what was that shift like from, I guess, getting to the side hustle phase before you guys like fully kind of took it full time?
Sure. And we officially launched in 2013.
Mm.
And leading up to that, you know, we're working on it quite a bit for a year or two before 2013. And then I did it in tandem until late 2016. Um, and then even after 2016, I would do some part-time consulting and things like that. So it was, you know, it took a long time. It wasn't just, hey, it's ready to go and I'm ready to work there full time. And, you know, the magic number everybody wants to get to is, well, as soon as I can replace my salary with the side gig, I'll leave the full-time gig. But I learned pretty quickly, and it's not certainly, I'm sure this isn't the hard and fast rule. But I think for the most part, it probably is until you are full time, you won't replace your salary. So it's kind of like chicken or the egg.
Mm.
As long as I was working both, I'm never going to bring OMJ to where I could replace my salary with my bank salary. It would take me leaving and focusing on it more. And I think I had to realize that. And then that's kind of like I've got to take a chance on it, you know? And it could fail miserably, but if I don't take the chance, I'm never going to get it to where it can be. And I know for me, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, that's probably that sort of extra gear they have is I would rather fail with the business than live with not knowing what could have been. Mm-hmm. Right. I think the more catastrophic thing for me was I don't want to be sitting here 10 years from now being like, what would have happened if I would have left my full-time job? And so that was more, I think for me, more important to answer that question than to be financially even with what I was leaving. Now, again, everybody's in different scenarios. I was fortunate. I did not have children at the time. Although as a month after I left, we found out we were pregnant with our first.
No way.
So,
wow.
So I call that was my added motivation. Well, it has to work now. And then also my, unsolicited advice would be, I made sure I kept things pretty, above board on my way out, despite what I may have wanted to do. Just because you never know if you have to go back, you never want to burn the bridges on your way out the door. So, but yeah, in 2016 is when I left to do it full time with OMJ.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool story. And I think, I love what you mentioned about like, you would rather fail the business and know that you actually like took that jump rather than 20 years being like, well, what if? I feel like that really kills people.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot where, I think it was a post on LinkedIn about, this guy interviewed a bunch of elderly people and asked them what their biggest regrets were. And like the underlying theme was that they just didn't go after their dream or that kind of aspiration that they had. So you broke it down perfectly. I love that you mentioned that. When it came to leaving, was it just telling, the company, hey, like you said, you didn't want to burn any bridges, which I totally agree with, especially like in Charlotte where, big city, but
Right.
everyone knows everyone, especially, what was that, like 2010, 11, 12 timeframe is even smaller than it is now. So were you like, hey, I'm starting this thing, or did you say you were going to somewhere else? Like, what was that like for you?
So I think most of the people I was around, they knew I had this on the side,
Yeah.
and it would kind of, it's kind of, and we talk about this. I talk about this a lot with clients and things and creating presence. A lot of our clients, surprise, actually work in, the financial industry or, at corporate companies. Companies where you traditionally do need to dress up a little more than, short and t-shirts. And so, we coach people a lot on like creating that presence. And so, at the time, obviously I was very much living, what I was making. So I'm in, I'm wearing appropriate, I'm not wearing a suit and tie on casual Friday, but I'm wearing a sport coat or, everything of mine is, was well tailored. So, people just naturally would be inquisitive of, hey, I became the guy of like, they were asking advice, hey, what should I wear?
Style, stuff like that.
Yeah. And so it was just sort of generally known, I think, by most people around me that I had this, that OMJ, that I had this company. But I think more specifically when it was time, it wasn't just like, hey, here's my 2 weeks. I'm out of here, guys. See you later. It was more like, hey, I'm at the place where I really need to focus on that. Like, I love what I do here. I appreciate all the support, but I've got to go chase this. But understanding, I don't want to leave you guys high and dry.
Mm.
What type of roll-off plan can we put in place? And so I think we worked on, like, I instead of just a 2-week, I probably worked, another 5-6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that we could offload everything. I was very involved in that process of training up, my backfill, waiting for them to hire a backfill. They were, obviously they were courteous enough to like get on it. So, that's sort of by not burning bridges. It would have been easy to be like, 2 weeks, see you later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So how did you go about getting your first few customers? And was it, you kind of built that brand internally that you were kind of the guy and it just naturally went into that? Or what was that like for you?
I think so. When we first started OMJ, we're in Charlotte, but we went to Appalachian State University. There's it's a pretty big network here in Charlotte. We're fairly well connected. Felipe especially is, he's like the most connected guy that I know.
That's funny.
He just has that ability to stay in touch with people. And so I think when we were first starting, we definitely had a lot of support through family and friends. We started as online only. So we were just doing really just more casual clothing, button downs, ties, t-shirts, like accessories. It was really more of like a upscale casual clothing brand. So if you think about, the time period, some of these companies like Southern Tide and Southern Marsh and Vineyard Vines, I mean, these are all very popular. We were kind of a little more, I think, geared more towards like the young professional. Our color palette was a bit more earth tones. It was a slimmer cut, not a boxy cut. More things that, like, for young professionals, appropriate to wear to work. I wasn't we weren't making bright pink button downs.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with those, but they just weren't our style. And so, just really nice high-end button downs and things like that. So we relied on our personal network. Sometimes that, we over kind of stated what we thought that personal support would be, right? Because I think a lot of times, and hopefully this will relate to a lot of the listeners too, but as an entrepreneur, you can get caught into, if I build it, they will come mentality, which, the field of dreams, classic line, if you build it, they will come. And I remember just thinking it would be like that for us because of, what we were making, and who wouldn't want, a nice button down, and we have these friends and things like that. And quickly realized that the Field of Dreams was not, we were not Kevin Costner or playing baseball.
Yeah.
And so it did not apply. People have their own lives and things that certainly matter a lot more than people they know who are starting a clothing company. And so, like, when we first launched and started, we had a lot of support, but then, like, by month 8, we might sell a couple t-shirts in a month. So it was really hard, but it was a learning experience that, hey, we're going to have to fight a lot harder for this to get our customers. And it's not going to be just people we went to school with. They can be there and be a part of this for sure, but we can't rely on that. And so that's when we kind of started thinking about, how do we pivot? And how do we pivot to make this bigger and more impactful and kind of get it to where we think it can be? And so that's where we really started looking at, what are products? Where's there a gap in the marketplace? Where can we provide value, even at like a local niche level? And so that's when the idea came of, hey, we need to get into the custom suiting part of this. Super localized, super niche, especially then. There wasn't a lot of, I don't even believe Indochino had launched. There wasn't a lot of options. and even still aren't a lot of options. But we kind of realized we needed to go into something. And then like for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, a high volume business where I've got to sell a lot of something to make a profit wasn't something I wanted to sign up for either. I wanted a low volume, high margin business, which on the flip side of that is very hard to scale that, to a large thing. So I see the value of, a high volume, smaller margin business where, you just scale it up. It's, hey, you get your logistics in place and your systems in place, and it's just, how do you get more customers? And you just multiply that. But for me, I maybe it's need for the control or things like that. But I wanted sort of the opposite. But what that meant was it's just going to be a slow process to build and grind this out. So I kind of knew signing up for that, where, I'm in those early days might only sell 10, 15 suits a month, and just slowly build that network and those customers. So, pluses and minuses, but for me, it was, how do we grow this? It's not going to be overnight. It's going to take time. And, oh, by the way, along the way, we're going to get so much better at building, suiting and clothing and things like that.
Yeah. And I bet in like 10 years, you're going to be like, yeah, we've gotten better at this and this and this, because that's just how business works. You get better at it just like any other thing over time,
Right.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So when it comes to actually navigating those early days and even nowadays, like what are some adversities or failures that y'all have had to, overcome?
Sure. I mean, I think the geopolitical landscape, the economic landscape, perfect example was, going back 2016, left the full-time job, had our first brick and mortar. Things are definitely starting to grow quicker than they were. We're selling into other retail stores. We're winning awards. And so by like 2018, 2019, we're ready to move into a much bigger retail space. So our first retail space is really more of a showroom. We're on the second floor in Uptown Charlotte, so the center city of Charlotte. And so we were ready to move to a much bigger location in a more retail-centric area. So now instead of 400 square feet, we're in close to 2,000 square feet in South End, it's like right outside the Uptown area of Charlotte. And that's where a lot of retail is. It's a lot of foot traffic. We're street level. Patagonia is 20 steps away, right? Allbirds is 30 steps away. So it's a retail shopping district. So just sort of magnifying the amount of people that see the space. Well, we were set to have our launch at the end of March of 2020 of our brand new store, and then COVID shuts everything down.
Dang.
So I think, that was another kind of, that's a huge challenge, right when we're supposed to open, which, when you're opening something new and big like that, you rely on that first wave of being in that new spot to really drive momentum, revenue, all of the things. So we really didn't get any of that. We're in a brand new lease that's very expensive at that time. And so I think that was tough. That was probably the biggest challenge, hopefully I'll ever experience in my life. But then, no matter how good we are, and I think this is to some point, there's always going to be things that are outside of your control.
Sure.
So obviously COVID was like the ultimate outside of our control, but we deal with things where we're shipping and we're dealing with things where we're making I made your shirt. There's a pattern with your name on it at our factory. That pattern is built for you. And that's great, but there's all sorts of human elements that touch that. So there's all forms of possibilities for errors, right? Granted, the better we are, the more likely that shirt's going to come back fitting perfect. But, it's not Six Sigma. It's the art of custom is the beauty of it. And so it's really hard to have perfection 100% of the time, And so I think we're constantly dealing with, is a shipment held up, or, somebody's got a wedding in a month and we got to get it here. And thankfully I'm knocking on every piece of wood I have. We've never missed a wedding, stuff comes back and, it's not is perfect majority of the time, but if it's not, we just fix it up. So, I think for me, it's been not necessarily things are always going to go wrong. It's just how do you handle them, and how do you get through it and come out the other side.
With COVID, did y'all just pivot to a lot of like online stuff, or what was that like to keep the business going?
We did, and I think in some ways it was good because we had been so focused on marching forward at that time.
Yeah.
At that point, if you would have asked me, what I'm sure you'll ask me is, what's the future? I would have said, oh yeah, by 2024, we'll have several other retail stores. And, we were just growing at a quicker pace, and it forced us to slow down and maybe fix some things that weren't fine-tuned. I remember even like we didn't even have everything on the website at COVID. So I definitely had plenty of time to put it all on there during those first few months. So I think it forced us to maybe take a few steps back and think about things. And, ultimately what we decided was, and a lot of this just sheer out of like, that was really the only option is, hey, we just need to focus on making this one store the very best it can be, the very best customer experience, the very best product. Let's do it well, do it phenomenally. And, we'll worry about future expansion at a time where, maybe it never happens. This is, kind of what we were thinking. And, we can control, and we'll do that.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love the whole like control the controllables. I talk about that all the time on a lot of my LinkedIn posts, Instagram posts, a lot with the podcast. And I think that's what makes great business owners is just being able to control the controllables, because there's so much that's out of your control. Like you can't help that, this piece of fabric or something is held up in customs, or, you can't help that, like for example, rents go up or something like a pandemic happens. Like there's so much that's out of your control, but again, control the controllables. I want to talk about y'all's customer service as a customer. When I walked in there, it's the first time in the store, like greeted, said my name, obviously you guys all looked excited to see me versus I'll go in, other retail stores that will remain unnamed and they're just like, no one's looking at you. No one's talking to you. Right. And I went into OMJ and it's like, hey, how's it go? Everyone like, it was so cool, man. So I would love to just hear from, one of the founders and owners of the business, like how you've kind of gone about instilling some strong customer service, not only yourself, but into your employees and kind of the importance of that.
Yeah, it is. I think that in 2024, it's sort of like a currency in itself.
Yeah.
The customer experience. It's like a, if you were to like, it's funny. We just talked about this and what makes like, your high-end retail special. And that's kind of like the secret to it for the most part, like, especially from like a custom suiting perspective, I think about all the companies and like, there are sort of 4 pillars. And to be good at that as a company, you need 3 of those pillars, but to be great, you need 4. And so the pillars like that we kind of follow is you have your like fit and pattern, Like that's like us measuring and making that pattern. You have your design, like the design aspect capability of it. It's being able to design something that's beautiful. The materials that are being used. So like the fabric that's being used, there's all versions of fabric, across the industry. And, there's a reason why some things that you get at some stores are very cheap, and there's, really nice fabric costs more. And then that fourth pillar is that experience, that customer experience. So without being great at that customer experience, at least for us, we can never be a great brand. I think that could probably be said for any business.
Yeah.
If you're not good at that, then you can never be a great brand, because you're always going to be lacking. And I think it's so important. So we really preach that to the team. I mean, I think we're hiring, we're looking for people that obviously value that as well. And we all have our days. The retail stores that shall be unnamed. You never know what's going on in somebody's life. I get it. They could be having a bad day, and it's just life. Like, you never want to be fully, sometimes it's hard to be fully excited to see somebody, but I think us kind of looking at it from, hey, this is a pillar of, if we want to be great in this, like there's no alternate. Like, we have to be. And oh, by the way, we're a small business, and so we don't have the luxury of not treating somebody less than stellar when they walk in.
Yeah, and like, unfortunately, word travels fast. People like spewing negativity,
and negativity travels so much faster.
It does.
Than
it does.
Positivity.
It does. I mean, it's like, you need like 10 positive situations to outweigh one negative when it comes to like people talking bad about your business, which is unfortunate, because you could just have one person who's a, bad anchor, and it's like, well, so, but yeah, man, like I said, from the customer side, I loved going in there. Love talking to everybody.
I will tell the team.
Yeah, please do. And I mean, just y'all offering like a coffee or a whiskey and having me sit down. It's like, I felt valued, and I felt taken care of, and I felt like you guys genuinely wanted to help me. You answered all my questions, versus like, you'll go in other stores and it's like, do they even know that I'm in the line right now trying to talk to somebody? So, so yeah, man, keep that up. Last thing I want to talk about it on the custom side of things, and then would love just to hear more about, what y'all have planned for the future. But I would love if you could break down kind of the value and ROI of maybe spending a little bit more money up front, whether it's on y'all or some other custom, nicer fabric, because you kind of helped me realize that when I walked in there. So,
yes. And this is something that I am very, very passionate about, because I've actually lived it. And I've seen the full kind of, I know I mentioned a little bit earlier about when I was in corporate, finance, becoming sort of the guy that people had questions for. But what I didn't mention was like the confidence that brings with it. Right. And then, I think from a value proposition, so, custom is not cheap. It is not, but it will last for a really long time, maybe even forever, as long as, you don't change a whole lot. But you think about all the things that, the fast fashion, as we would call it, where you're buying something and then it wears out in a year or two. I know we specifically talked about shoes, so we'll start there, but you get a pair of shoes, and, maybe you get a pair of shoes that's $100, which, hey, and like I said, I am price conscious, so I get it. But let's say you go to, a department store or a Belk or a, even like a Nordstrom or wherever, and you get, okay, I get a pair of shoes, $100, and those wear out. At that price point, you're probably not going to be able to resell those shoes. So when they wear out, they're done. And if you're wearing those multiple days a week, they're probably going to wear out in a year or so. And it could be much faster, just depending on your gait, how you're walking and things like that. But like a shoe that's well made, you're going to be able to resole. So, if it's well made, it's going to last longer. And then B, when it is time to replace it, you just get it resold. So you might spend $400 on a pair of shoes. I am acknowledging that is definitely a lot, but those are going to last you forever. So you can spend $400 on a pair of shoes that last you forever. You get them resold, maybe pay $50 to have them resold every 2 years. Or you buy a new pair of shoes every year for $100. But that pair of shoes that you're buying every year, it's not going to look as nice. It's not going to be as comfortable, so that's just the monetary benefit of buying something nicer. The other is the benefit of wearing something that does fit better and it is made better. And so it's, just going to look better from that standpoint. And then the intrinsic value of like feeling good and like you're wearing something that, you feel good about and that is makes you feel more confident. So, I use the shoes as an example, but you could use that with suiting, with shirting. I have the very first 2 shirts that I made when I was first practicing custom. I was wearing one last week, one of those shirts. I still have those. There were 2 white shirts. They were a fabric that was like more like a brush cotton, super comfortable. And I still wear those 13 years later. And that shirt, and it's not that I'm the same size I was 13 years ago, because I'm definitely not, but the shirts sort of mold to me and they grow with me. Now, granted, if I gain like 25 pounds, probably not, but if I fluctuate 10, 15 pounds and I can still wear that shirt, it still looks great. It's just a high-end, cotton material. Imagine how many, I'm trying to think of them, like CT, Charles TeWitt shirts. How many would you go through in 13 years to counteract that one shirt that I still wear those shirts today.
Right.
Same thing with suiting. A well-made suit, and that's not just from the fabric on the outside, the fabric on the inside. It'll last you forever. If you take care of it, it's going to last you the rest of your life. And, we're in the business of building things that are timeless as well. So there's, it's not going to be a trend driven design unless the customer really wants that. So, 10 really well-made pieces, even if they are expensive, in the course of 10, 20 years, not from a monetary perspective, you're going to spend less. And then from the amount you gain in confidence and feeling good and feeling like, hey, this is easy. When I wear this jacket, I'm not sore when I take the jacket off. Those are the things that I think you really gain.
Yeah, definitely. And I like what you mentioned to me when I went in there to get a suit. You were kind of asking like, okay, what's this for? What's the occasion? I was like, oh, it's mainly for work. I have, U.S. federal government clients. Like I'm going in government buildings. You're like, all right, in that case, I can maybe add like a slight break to your pants because you're not getting this for like a spring outdoor wedding with like your pants like super, super tailored with some loafers. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. And so also that experience of like, I wouldn't have really noticed that if I didn't go to y'all. So I think that's another component of it as well.
That's a great, that's the advice for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I get it too. And I constantly, people will say, well, I want what you're wearing. I want the break, like the break of the pants, like how you have it. And I'm like, well, now I own a clothing store, so I can get away with it.
Yeah.
I can get away with not wearing socks. Okay.
Right.
If you're in a boardroom, I do not maybe advise. I don't know, maybe you work somewhere very progressive, but we do a little coaching there always helps.
Yeah. I'm just imagining like one of the big banks, someone walking in a boardroom middle of summer. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What did you tell me to, like, mainly for the guys out there, getting a navy suit and you said what, like 2 or 3 white shirts, maybe like a blue and a pink to kind of start out with? Was that it? Or
That's it, man. I'm impressed with the retention.
Yeah,
So
man.
it makes me feel good. Makes me, yeah. So I'm always Navy suit first. A well-made Navy suit will take you really everywhere you need to go. I recommend you know 3 to 5 shirts. Definitely at least 2 white, and then so if you're doing 5, 3 white, 1 light blue, 1 sort of alt. Maybe it's like a pink or lavender or something like that. If you want to get if you want to be a little bit, feel not like you're not just wearing the white or light blue every day. And then you can always get like textures or patterns or things like that. So like if you have 3 white shirts, maybe one of them has a little bit of a texture in it. But really that's all you need, those things from if you have a where, you're dressing up and, after you have your first suit, maybe you get into like a gray, medium gray, charcoal, that kind of can sub everywhere. Black wouldn't be needed. So for the more, funerals and things like that. And then I really get into like sport coats, just like a go-to sport coat that you can have to dress up, elevate. Maybe you just have chinos on, or maybe you're going out to eat and you have a pair of denim on, but you can throw a sport coat on. I mean, you instantly level up like over 90% of your peers by that sport. And it doesn't even have to be a super dressy look. Again, you could be wearing it with a white button down and jeans. But you're just going to look, it goes a long way with just showing like, I care what I look like, and kind of creating that presence I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And like, I'm the big component of like, you never know who you're going to run into. I could run into like a next podcast guest, and if I'm just in a nice restaurant in shorts and a t-shirt, and be like, who's this guy? Right. So, I mean, that's a good idea as well, of kind of that executive presence. Even if you're not like a CEO, it's important to kind of have that. So, cool, man. Well, what's next for OMJ, and where can people connect with you? Also, how can people order online if they're like in Texas or California and they're like, I want to get some of this, high quality clothes that Brad's referencing here?
So omjclothing.com. And we do have a lot of casual, timeless casual essentials online. So really high end Supima t-shirts, things like that, button downs, ties, accessories. Those are all available online, pretty much always in stock. From a social media perspective, at OMJ Clothing, I think across everything. Is a great way to get in touch with us, DM us. You can email us info@OMJ Clothing, or Brad at OMJ Clothing, really. Always happy to reach out and answer any questions when you reach out. And then so like for us, I mean, what's next is, I think, as the PTSD of COVID has left me, I think I'm shedding it. The past 2 years have been really phenomenal. I mean, I think for a lot of businesses, it's been great, but especially for us, they've been just really great. We're so fortunate. So fortunate to folks like yourself that support us, and come and work with us and become clients and customers. I think I've finally maybe accepted that, we're ready to maybe think about an extra location. Would most certainly probably be here in Charlotte. So another location here in Charlotte. And then who knows beyond that. If you are local to Charlotte, we do have a whiskey club. So if you are into bourbon whiskey, we have quarterly events. It's great. I will say this to plug it, because we had our 1-year anniversary. So there was initial folks that renewed, that joined. Everybody that renewed got entered into a raffle, and I literally just gave away a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle 15 Family Reserve.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you the type of whiskeys that we're looking at, and giving away, and then quarterly events, we'll have, Maker's Mark, Jack Daniels. We're doing tastings, and they're bringing in stuff that you really can't find. So really great bourbons and whiskeys. And then we have started a podcast in your shadow. No, it's something I've always really wanted to do. I think it just adds to our customer experience. We're talking about, we did a podcast on the back debate, the basics, what are the 10 essential items you should own? I know we talked a little bit about that. Custom suiting 101. We're talking about all things sort of like custom, pseudo custom, throw in a little pop culture. We did a draft of, our favorite TV shows that are fashionable, think Suits or Mad Men and, all that fun stuff. So, a lot of stuff on the kind of social media marketing connection front for us, and really just expanding that for our customers, providing value for them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love that. I'll throw all the website, social media links, all that in the show notes. And again, love what y'all are doing, and obviously keep it up, because I think you guys are just continuing to grow day after day, which is great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's it, everyone. Thanks again for taking the time to tune into this week's episode of Next Level Minds. Be sure to go check out OMJ Clothing. I personally have a few items of clothing from there. I got a shirt, suit. I'm about to get some more as well. And trust me, these things fit like a freaking glove. So if you want a new shirt, new suit, new belt, shoes, you name it, this is the spot to go. They do online orders as well, but if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, or honestly just the Southeast, definitely go make the trip. Other than that, thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of Next Level Minds, and I hope everybody has a fantastic week ahead.